that we're going to get into today. And really, this is unnecessary. Almost everybody knows, like 99% of all people know, that Nazi Germany was pagan and was turning away from Christianity. They had positive Christianity. They were bringing back Germanic paganism, and they were getting rid of Christianity, essentially. They were at least transitioning away from it. So 99% of all people know this, but a fringe minority online likes to lie and ignore, because if they acknowledge this, that all the things that they were saying about Christianity, it would almost confirm all the similar things about Christianity that people have been saying since then. So huge shout out to... So there's all these types of memes too, and this is very popular on Twitter and on, alternative video streaming and video posting sites. Very popular to portray the Nazis as hardcore Christians. But we're going to do start off with a thread from our buddy Volkish Spirit. Some of the top statements that refute this, and they're just ignoring the big picture and the full truth. We're just going to cover all the other stuff, and it'll really educate everybody to exactly what they were thinking. Is the music too loud in the background? We're listening to the most famous German composer, who I've not really ever heard of, Richard Wagner. I mean, I've heard of him, but not familiar with his classical music gems. We're playing the best of Richard Wagner to set the scene. Yeah, only coping anti-Semitic Christians like to promote that the National Socialists were Christian. They're not given the full picture. So, starting with Volkish Spirit, Robert Ley, head of the German Labor Front, wrote, "The Jew Paul wanted to take everything from us, our God and our German soul. The Jew is chosen to bring us German salvation. The Pauline doctrine promises heaven to those who subject themselves to it, but hell to those who reject this Jewish dogma. You're going to burn in hell forever if you don't believe in the magical Jewish superhero and the blood atonement sacrifices." Exactly like the head of the Labor Front said that. Okay. Exactly like we're saying today. "What have we to do with the Moses and the Jewish prophets? Why do we care about these fake Jewish prophecies? At a time when the German people is fighting for its life against Jewry, who dares to speak to us of the rabbis named Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the rest of them?" Yeah, hard to pretend like you're against Jews when your whole religion is intimately connected to Jewish prophecy and the Jewish God. The Pauline doctrines call upon Yahweh, the terrible Jewish God, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and their kin plague our air and daily remind us that we are a long way from overcoming the Jew. That's how I feel. As long as there's the Christian-controlled opposition and the Christians and Muslims, the two biggest religions in the world, affirming and elevating the idea of Hebrew Torah prophecy and messianism, we're a long way from ever overcoming Yahweh and the Torah prophecy agenda. The physical Jew has been taken from our midst, but his Mosaic and Pauline spirit still lives among us with the spiritually Jewish Christians. Anyone who has any ties at all to it can never fight completely and radically against the Jews. In other words, your limited hangout, controlled opposition. If you're not opposing Yahweh and the idea that their prophecies are real, the idea that they were ever chosen, you're not actually really opposing the core fundamental identity of Judaism. So that was 1944 from Dresden, Robert Ley, head of the Labor Front. Now, Richard, I'm going to get all these names right. I don't speak German. Richard Dore, Reich Minister of Food and Agriculture, says, "The church had withdrawn masses of the most valuable blood from its natural destiny through the persecutions of witches, pagan European girls. This is the path of Judaism in the 19th century, especially in the time immediately behind us, was more bloodless, but in its effect on our national power by no means less effective. The Jewish destruction of the German woman corresponds to the Christian church persecution of witches. Both have a common spiritual father, Yahweh. Yeah, Christian Europeans burning other Europeans at the stake as heretics or because they're pagans, burning their pagan pre-Christian philosophy and literature and destroying and defacing our statues and our sculptures and our beautiful architecture and temples, all in the name of the jealous monotheistic God of the Jews. Handbook for German Army Officers, Why We Fight, 1944, assorted quotes. What means and methods does the Jew use to gain dominion over the nations? He dominates the peoples spiritually. Theological warfare. Dominates through the mind control of religion. I haven't even read all these yet, honestly. This thread specifically, I've covered a lot more on past shows, but this is just going to be the whole show deep dive for posterity to destroy the lying Christians on the internet. As a member of the so-called chosen people, he dominates the people spiritually with the help of his political ideas. As a member of the so-called chosen people, who even inspired a religion to mankind, Christianity, it was not difficult for him to find a way into all peoples. The very idea of being God's called people always had to give Judaism great impetus. In any case, the form of religious and political faith laid down in the law of Moses in the whole of the Old Testament to allow Judaism to resist a whole world for millennia because of Christianity. To make it almost imperishable. You can't destroy it because Christianity shields it and protects it and doesn't allow anybody to say the Torah is nonsense. Christianity and Islam wiped out paganism while ensuring the survival of Judaism and, in effect, protecting Judaism, which is now more powerful than ever today. When the Israelites returned from exile, and some of them immediately immigrated to the diaspora, they were incapable of any kind of warlike action. Their lust for power and world domination were spiritually transformed into the grandiose idea of a cosmic final judgment on non-Jewish humanity. Through Yahweh and into the Messiah's hope, according to which Yahweh would create a paradise on earth for the Jews with all material pleasures. Even the Christians' teaching bear witness to this, the real originators of which are the Jews. An absurd beginning then to contradict Jewish emancipation on religious grounds. On every holy day, the teachings of Jewish heroes and poets were proclaimed to the people, a proof that they were considered morally superior. And we debate Christians today, and they'd say, we need Christianity because we'd have no morals without it. Well, Christianity is a Jewish movement. The Old Testament, the Torah, and the Talmud show a complete historical correspondence. A continuous metaphysical structure links religious, political, and ideological worldviews and has left its mark on the Jewish face for millennia. The germ cell and carrier of its entire world of ideas was its priesthood, the rabbinate. They represented the center from which all political and ideological ideas emanated, but also the organization that carried his world of ideas into the future. The priesthood is still leading upper classes today. And that was Handbook for German Officers. Himmler, one of Hitler's top guys, on forced Christianization. About 1,500 years ago, a large part of the people who became Christians and were baptized, which was always the sign of Christianization, were not baptized out of inner conviction. It was rather the case that at first a number were baptized out of opportunism. These were the traitors among this people, and the others were baptized after personal persecution by fire and sword. And still later, many adopted the Christian conviction and worldview in order to escape persecution and torture. Himmler in a speech in 1937. If Hitler was a devout Christian and Germany was a Christian movement, why was Himmler one of his top guys saying things like this? They would say one thing to the masses and in the press, and behind the scenes, they were moving away from it, undoubtedly. Himmler on overcoming Christianity. We will have to deal with Christianity in a tougher way than hitherto. We must settle accounts with this Christianity, this greatest of plagues that could have happened to us in our history, which has weakened us in every conflict. And our generation does not do it when then would I think drag on for a lifetime. We must overcome it within ourselves. Today at Heydrich's funeral, I intentionally expressed in my oration from my deepest conviction a belief in God, a belief in fate, an ancient one, as I called him. That is the old Germanic word, Ralda. By rooting our people in a deep ideological awareness of ancestors and grandchildren, we must once more persuade them that they must have sons. We can do a very great... The Christians debate and say, you have to be Christian, Europe has to be Christian, otherwise our birth rates will plummet and we won't have any children. And I say, you can promote big families and incentivize reproduction without Christianity. We have a great deal, but everything that we do must be justifiable for the clan, our ancestors. If we do not secure this moral foundation, which is the deepest and best because the most natural, we will not be able to overcome Christianity on this plane and create the Germanic Reich, which will be a blessing for the earth. 1942. And all of these are sourced and legit. By the way, none of these are made up. These guys have done incredible research. I've read none of these books of the source material. This is all just aggregated. They send them to me, basically. They tag me and send them to me. Himmler on Christianity as alien and shameful. Which of us wandering through the lovely Germanic countryside and coming unawares upon a crucifix does not feel deep in his heart a strange but enduring sense of shame? The gods of our ancestors were different. They were men and carried in their hands a weapon which typified the natural characteristics of our race, namely readiness to act and self-reliance. How different this pale figure on the cross, whose passivity and emphasized suffering express only humility and self-debasement, qualities which we, conscious of our heroic blood, utterly deny. The corruption of our blood caused by the intrusion of this alien philosophy must be ended. That's Hitler or Christ, a textbook in Nazi Germany. Oh, a portrayal of Christianity in the history textbooks of Nazi Germany. Oh, and every one of these links, they always provide the link too. Okay, turn down the music. Off? I kind of like it. Is that better? I turned it down a little bit. Agree? Okay, 1 in the chat if you want me to turn it off. On in the chat if you want me to leave it on. Or off or on in the chat. I like it. Oh, it's Kurt Wagner. Wagner, right. He is one of my favorite composers of the 19th century, along with Chopin. Okay. All right. On. Everybody's saying on, guys. I turned it lower. All right, we're leaving it on. I like it. All right, what else do we have here? Intrusion. That was a fire one. Himmler on Christianity as Bolshevism. 150 years ago, someone at a Catholic university wrote a doctoral thesis with the title, "Does a Woman Have a Soul?" From this, the whole tendency of Christianity emerges. It is directed at the absolute destruction of women and at emphasizing the inferiority of women. The entire substance of the priesthood and of the whole of Christianity is, I am firmly convinced, an erotic union of men from the construction and maintenance of this 2,000-year-old Bolshevism. I think that the Ons won it, guys. Sorry. I turned it down as much as I could. All right. Alfred Rosenberg, Director of Intellectual and Ideological Education at the NSDAP. Excerpts from his book, Myth of the 20th Century, which was banned by the Vatican. This proved thoroughly justified, for no sooner had Christianity become the state religion under Constantine than the Old Testament spirit of hatred showed its hideous face. The Christians at once demanded the application of the punishment prescribed in the Old Testament against the worship of idols. In Italy, with the exception of Rome itself, the temples of Jupiter were closed. We can sympathize with the despair of Emperor Julian. Yes, we can. The God of Israel, the whole objective of Judaism and the Messiah is to theologically conquer and subdue all the nations, eradicate all the ethnic gods in the pagan pantheon of gods and myths and legends and lore and ancestors, and conquer it and Judaize it. And they all recognize this because it's obvious. If you're not brainwashed in the cult, and you have any discernment, and you're informed on what Judaism and Christianity and Abrahamism teaches, this is the only conclusion, if you're being honest. Page 74. The Christian, and this is, what was this again? Rosenberg. Not Jewish, by the way, German. The Christian movement disrupting old forms seemed to be Pharisee Saul to hold great promise of practical usefulness. He joined its ranks, possessed by an unrestrained fanaticism. He preached international revolution against the Roman Empire. Despite all subsequent attempts at reform, his teachings still retain the Jewish spiritual basis, the Talmudic Oriental aspect of both the Catholic and the Lutheran churches. Paul accomplishes something that is never admitted in religious circles. He made the suppressed Jewish national rebellion internationally effective, thus paving the way for the further spread of racial chaos in the ancient world. The Jews in Rome knew this very well when they offered their synagogues as places where he could make his proselytizing speeches. And all the rabbis say the same thing about Paul and Christianity and Judaizing everybody. They say the same thing, and when we show clips of the rabbis saying these things, the Christian Nazis say, "You believe the Jews? Oh, you trust those lying Jews?" And then crickets when we read them all these quotes, confirming all the same thing that are just obvious to anybody that's being honest. But by then, the Bible had been a popular work, and the prophecies of the Old Testament integral to religion. Yeah, it's all at the core of prophecy deception. As a result, the Judaization and listlessness of our life were pushed a step further, and it's no wonder that thenceforth blonde German children were forced every Sunday to sing, to you, O Jehovah, will I sing, for where is such a God as you?" The so-called Old Testament, The so-called Old Testament must be abolished. Okay, it's not letting me zoom in for some reason. The so-called Old Testament must be abolished once and for all as a book of religion. By this, the unsuccessful attempt by the last 1,500 years to make us spiritually into Jews will be eliminated. That's some fire. Homer represented the highest enhancement of what was Greek, and he guarded this even in decline. Jehovah is the symbol of unbridled Jewry. The belief in Jehovah is the strength of even the lowest Jewish haggler. The unity also holds for German history, for its people, its values, for the very old and new myth, and for the supporting ideas of German folkhood. One form of Odin is dead. That is Odin, who was the highest of the many gods, and who has appeared as the embodiment of a generation still given up to natural symbolisms, but Odin as the eternal mirror image of the primal spiritual power of Nordic man lives today, just as he did over 5,000 years ago. All right, this is a thread of 10, I believe. Official National Socialist periodical magazine on St. Paul. The foresight for a doctrine that declared all natural differences of blood and race to be a delusion, and from the point of view of being a child of God, divided people into good and bad. And this Stoic philosophy created the abstract concept of global citizenship. The even more spiritual concept of heaven citizenship emerged in Christian thought. St. Paul gives the citizenship of heaven a meaningful expression by wanting to see not only all the ethnic differences, but also all socially and sexual differences abolished for his worldwide community. It could not be avoided that this religious citizenship of heaven, as soon as it claimed to be the sole idea of life, would have come into conflict with a national racial state order. Okay. 7. Adolf Hitler lesser known quotes from a 1920 public speech titled "Why We Are Anti-Semites." We know that it was precisely the Jew who used Christianity, not out of love for Christianity, but in part only out of the realization that this new religion rejected earthly power and state authority above all and recognized only a higher supernatural Lord. That this religion had to lay the axe to the root of the Roman state, which was built on the authority of the authorities, and he, the Jews, became the bearer of this new religion, its greatest propagator. Hitler 1920 speech. Intimate family did not prevent their Jews' own archfather Abraham for a moment. Okay, pimping his own wife. Pimping his wife. Okay. It is not necessary that everything the Bible says is true word for word, but on the whole it does give an extract of at least the conception of the history of Judaism, as it is made up by the Jews themselves. Made up a religion that they're chosen by God and meant to rule the other nations? I can't believe it. They would never make that up. And there we see that the Jew writes this work quite harmlessly. There is nothing monstrous about him describing how he has used cunning and deceit to infiltrate and contaminate race after race, was always thrown out, but chose another one without being offended. How he pimped and bargained when it came to his ideal, prepared to sacrifice his family too. The swastika as a pre-Christian symbol. We know that all these northern people had one symbol in common, the symbol of the sun. They created cults of light, and they've created symbols of the tools for making fire. It is the swastika, which was one sign of established communities of Aryan culture. And this is from the book, okay, I'm not going to be able to read that, but Adolf Hitler's speech in the Hofbrauhaus, that's the beer hall, right? Sausage Hall in Munich, 1920. Memorandum from Bormann, another top official. From Bormann's office, memorandum. From a conversation that took place with Hitler. The missionaries who came to Germania to spread Christianity were political commissars. The Roman state was destroyed by Christianity, and the so-called religion of Paul revolutionized the slaves and the subhuman elements of Roman society. Christianity is in every age characterized by its cultural effects. The Roman artist, the Roman state, created the finest works of art. The so-called works of art made by the Christians of those years that have been preserved in the catacombs show Bolshevik, futuristic traits. The whole magnitude of the contrast between barbarism and Christianity is revealed in the hygiene both inspired. We still to this day wonder at the Roman aqueducts and baths. In contrast, Christianity suppressed every form of sanitation made necessary by nature. A man became a saint by living in his own excrement. Even today, it is forbidden for nuns to bathe undressed. Is that true? nuns bathe in their robes. And it's interesting to think about how they were saying all of this long before the creation of Israel, not too long before, right before the creation of Israel, and Christian Zionism to really explode and manifest itself like we've seen today, with Christians all around the world like worshiping a foreign people. They were saying all this before the Christian Zionists went crazy. Volkish Spirit is here. Good to have you here, my friend. A whole lot of reading for this show. What a day. Coincidentally, today, guys, is Holocaust Remembrance Day. Coincidentally, the same day that I do this show. Imagine that. Not planned out, too. I realized it right before I went live. I've been saying I'm going to do this show for weeks, if not months. And we're here. How would the world look if Christianity had not come and scientific discovery had not stopped for around 1,500 years? The extent to which Christianity destroyed the so-called barbarian culture is something we can hardly imagine today. Something similar might have happened if Thomas Munsert had established himself in his doctrine. What we need are history books by National Socialist scholars who possess a strong, realistic sense and therefore do not come up with completely idiotic hypotheses. Yeah, we need we need to get realistic is what we need to do. Good, that's what I'm always saying. Number 9, official NSDAP booklet on National Socialist cultural policy. When Christianity nourished from Jewish and Middle Eastern sap comes to Rome, a new core grows in the empty shell. The Roman Catholic Church, with its clergy, organized into the fighting church, continues the religion of the Roman army. With its claim to world importance, the empire's claim to worldly power with intellectualized religious means. The so-called champion view that before Christianity, genuine morality existed nowhere, aside from perhaps the Jews, is just as outrageous as narrow-minded and visibly false. It's funny how all of the things I've experienced and observed with Christians and my thoughts on dealing with Christianity and in studying Christianity, and it feels like real vindication to see so many people in the past noticing the exact same things. That's why the Christians are so desperate. The internet Christians are so desperate to cover up all of this information of their critiques of Christianity. And they lie and gaslight and say they were all devout Christians. There's so much false. One must not simply equate morality and Christianity as one, and there is much high morality outside of Christianity, which in its denominations encompasses only a fraction of mankind, even of cultured mankind. We will never share the dogmatic intolerance of political Catholicism and Protestantism, rather oppose it with clear determination. Yeah, Judaism and Messianism is intolerant of any other people's cultures and traditions and holidays and religions and gods. Jealous, monotheistic God of the Jews, their fictional God that chose them, wants to conquer and subdue theologically all of the world. Yeah, these guys were smart and green-pilled. Some of the best philosophers and artists and scholars and scientists. And that's not like me making that up. This is like a well-known thing. And I do have lots of German ancestry as well. What hinges on the moral values of Germanic man shows itself, especially in the North, when Christianity destroys it even before it takes inward roots. For the zealots of the new faith, Christianity, teach the eternal damnation of the ancestors, and soon grave robbers. Uh-oh, we got a commercial. And teach external damnation of our ancestors, and soon grave robbers dig up the mounds of prehistory with gold-greedy hands. Woman, up until the highly revered as close to the divinity, is now considered as in league with the devil. a previously unknown martyr creating cruelty sets in as a result of this merciless conversion in the north. And that was the official NSDAP booklet for their policy. Number 10, last one on this tab. Alfred Rosenberg again on the New Testament. Quote, "The New Testament can therefore no longer provide a decisive basis for the formation of a new spiritual community. To try this again today after 1,000 years of failure would mean starting a new fruitless task." It's a fruitless task to try to say Christian anti-Semitism, more messianic, Jews killed Jesus, Jews worship the devil, they're the fake Jews, where you have the new covenant. All of that is fruitless. It's dead on arrival. It's a non-starter. All it does is play the villain and give them their victimhood status. You're never going to overcome. You're completely dominated by establishment mainstream Christianity that will call you a heretic and disavow you and ban you and excommunicate you from the churches. The research into these stories in the examination of this era no longer has anything to do with religion, but only become a matter of historical research. The New Testament is no longer the present, but a dying past. It's all fake Jewish midrash prophecy fulfilling mystical Judaism. Unfathomably based, I know. Hitler on Christians validating Jewish prophecy. Like what I always say. Christians try to argue and impose that magical Jewish prophecies are real. If you believe Jewish prophecies are real, you've already lost. You've already lost their game. You've already ceded power to them as God's chosen people. The influence of world Jewry on this earth has already become so strong that it not only sees the dream of the fathers of a coming world domination come true. He hasn't even seen the rebuilt Israel and Gog and Magog war and Israel rising to a cyber superpower in the domination over America. And he says that domination is already coming true, but also prepares the peoples destined for destruction with cynical baseness. Serious Bible students, Christians, walk as the forerunners of the eternal Jew through the individual peoples and countries and proclaim the approach of the 1,000-year empire, preventing possible resistance from the outset with the cunning reference to divine prophecies. Christianity prevents possible resistance from the outset. Christianity is not opposing Yahweh in the messianic prophetic conspiracy. It has taken up the cause. It promotes Yahweh Messiah supremacy with cunning reference to divine prophecies. So true. No lies detected. How shameful. All the big influencers on Twitter and the internet that are covering up all of this information about what they were saying about Christianity that completely vindicates all of us and our examination of Christianity and how it plays out and the dynamic Christianity and Islam have with Christianity. That was 1937. Himmler tells the church their time is over. I once told a high-ranking church representative, your time is over. Now you will face exactly what you did to us. The 2,000... Okay, it keeps messing up. I can't do the zoom. The 2,000 years where you lived in the sunshine and we in the shadows have come to an end. Now we will live in the sunshine and you in the shadows. Himmler's speech, 1937. So this is another account. Hitler hated Christ. And he is a Christian who doesn't like everybody lying and saying Hitler was a devout Christian and exposes him as a pagan. He did a whole thread here, but we're going to skip and I'm going to give my voice a rest and we're going to just show you a couple of the leading Catholic Christians also say, without question, they know Germany was a pagan movement. So here is a Bishop Richard Williamson who also coincidentally just passed away today or yesterday. What odd timing for this stream.
Okay. The Ancient Ones says, why did God allow the Axis powers to lose the war?
Because Hitler was a pagan. Would be my flash.
Christian says Hitler lost the war because he was a pagan. He lost the war versus the Judeo-Christians and the Zionist allied America and Europe. And of course the Bolsheviks in Russia. Lucas Gage says Hitler was a Catholic. Yeah. How much of a misrepresentation is that for all these guys to... I see some of these guys wearing crosses with swastika, a symbol that they apparently outlawed as well. We'll cover. That's what I'm saying. These Christians are lying and not giving you the full truth about their views on Christianity. So the Catholic bishop says Hitler lost because he was not a Christian and he was a pagan.
Because Hitler was a pagan. Would be my flash answer and my swift answer. He was a great German patriot, but he was a pagan. You know, he refused Jesus Christ and he refused the Catholic Church.
Yeah, I know he was born and raised a Catholic, just like I was born and raised a Christian. Would you still call me a Christian? Say that I was on video 25 years ago saying that I believed in Jesus. Are they going to quote me and then ignore, the last 10 years of me exposing Christianity and clearly not being a Christian?
Well, that was very unwise. He was a brilliant politician in many ways, but he had the wrong goals. And he did not put God in his right place, and that was fatal. And therefore Germany was smashed. Franco...
Smashed. Germany is smashed. If you don't worship the King of the Jews, you're smashed by all the rest of the Christians. And they had Catholic and Protestant traitors in Germany as well. And they were colluding with Jews and allied with Jews. So if you don't want to worship the God of the Jews, you'll get destroyed by Christians who ally with Jews. That's what this supposed. This is like, I think there's a clip of him denying the Holocaust, and also the clip of he's like the anti-Jewish Catholic, like one of the only anti-Jewish Catholics, and he just died today. Also
defended God. Defended the Catholic cause, and therefore God gave him victory over the communists, one of the very rare victories in modern times over communism, over the advance of communism. Mussolini half looked after God, half did not look after God, and he half got smashed. Hitler defied God big time and got completely smashed.
Defied God? So are you going to call him a lying Jew? One of the top anti-Semitic Catholics in the world, another top anti-Semitic Catholic in the world, also will tell you the same thing. Here's E. Michael Jones.
Okay, so Hitler comes to power, can't unify Germany because of the Catholic-Protestant split, tries to do it, can't do it, so he has to unify.
So he couldn't unify Germany because Christianity is sectarian and didn't unite Europe and divided, and there's Europeans divided over differences on Jewish scripture. So that's a Christian problem. Sorry.
Okay, so Hitler comes to power, can't unify Germany because of the Catholic-Protestant split, tries to do it, can't do it, so he has to unify them according to neo-pagan myths based on Wagner and Nietzsche and all of this godlessness.
All of this godlessness. No, they didn't worship the Jews enough. They didn't believe the Jews' prophecies and that they were magical and worshiped the King of the Jews and the God of Israel.
Just had a corrupting effect on. Okay, so Hitler comes to power, can't you?
So all your leading anti-Semitic Catholics all admit without question that Hitler was a pagan
and imperil all the other races, just like it did in the past. And it's true. I mean, Hitler was a pagan in many ways. And, some of his people were into the occult and esoteric stuff, and they were into eugenics. I think people, non-white
occult and esoteric stuff, like that's what they call paganism, pretty much, right?
People rightly don't want to be killed or lost in the gene pool. I think imperil all the.
All right. So what's this here? Volkish note. Nick is 100% correct, and it's blatantly obvious truth for anyone who is intellectually honest. All it takes is a brief and critical look at National Socialist writings and policies, and it swiftly becomes crystal clear that this was not a Christian movement. From its very inception, a political party that espoused race and blood as the foundation of its political doctrine is already instantly at odds with biblical teachings. This should go without saying. But many online anti-Semitic Christians prefer to bend scripture in order to make it fit. And that's from Volkish Spirit in the chat, who basically did all of the research for this show. So the Nazis say the things about Christianity. The Romans say the same thing about Christianity. The Catholics are saying that Hitler and the Nazis were pagan. The Jews are saying that Nazi and the Hitler were pagan. And then the lying, coping, gaslighting Christians online are going to try to ignore all this and try to prevent and block us from having any type of real opposition to the Yahweh, Messiah, Torah prophecy conspiracy.
Communist, that's godless.
The Nazi, well, World War II was a pagan war, right? I mean, Nazi Germany was a post-Christian society. The Soviet Union was a post-Christian society. These were.
Nietzsche's primary argument against Christianity was that it was, in some ways, too.
I think Nazis were pagan.
Equated people. I think Nazis were pagan.
Yeah, Nazis were absolutely pagan. So Nazis were honest enough, like the Marquis de Sade, right, to say, if we're going to reject Christianity, then the Christian morality has got to go. There's no basis to treat people as though they have inherent dignity.
If you don't want to reject worship a Jew and